Well, I'm so glad you're all here. Thank you so much for coming. Let's do something fun and useful. So I don't know that you all know each other, so if you could just say your name, where you are, and maybe one thing about writing that interests you or that perplexes you or challenges you or captures your imagination. One thing about writing. So I'll like this. I'm Bill. I live in Reno, Nevada. And one thing that fascinates me about writing is the difference between intention and reception. Who'd like to go next?
I'll go. I'm Paige.
Thanks, Paige.
I'm usually on the East Coast. I met Bill doing a morning pages. Sorry, God, Artist Way. I am discombobulated because I'm actually on the West Coast with you, Bill. And so it's 3:30 and I've been racing around and my cousins are from Gardnerville, Nevada. So I'm going to drop out. I'm going to Nevada drop name with you.
That's right.
Writing, something interesting about writing. Oh Lord, I'm not ready for that. This is so cliche. It's amazingly emotionally healing. I know that's a cliche, but I'm just going to say it.
There's a reason that people keep saying that, Paige.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jody, would you be willing to go next?
Sure. I was trying to put the screen up to block the light from behind me. Writing to me, what it means, I think it's mostly a creative outlet. And I'm in Grayson County, Virginia, if that was part of the question.
Okay, thanks, Jody. Stephen?
Hi, everybody. I'm Stephen. I live in New York City. And I've been thinking about the imagination as a capacity in human beings. So I like doing all the conscious work, and then I like whatever happens later after, if I have some leisure to be imaginative. I love that.
All right, thank you, Stephen. And Cynthia?
I am in Southwest Virginia in the mountains. One thing that I don't know fascinates me about writing is that I often think of that. Okay, so I love thinking about words and their origins, and I think a lot about cursive. I think they don't teach kids how to write cursive very much anymore in school, but I think it's I love being able to write cursive, and it makes me think of, the word origin of cursive is similar to cursorial, which, being kind of an animal person, I think about the cursorial nature of certain animals, and it's like this, their characteristic of being habit of fleeing predators, and so they're very fleet and they're running. And so I think about when I'm really in the flow of writing, and it's, of course, it's cursive because that's fast and flowing. It's cursorial. It's running and leaping and bounding. And so that's one thing.
I love it. Beautiful. Thank you, Cynthia. Welcome, Melinda. We're just doing introductions. What we're saying is our name, where we are, and one thing that captures our interest about writing. Janice, would you be willing to go next and model for Melinda?
Sure. I'm Janice. I live in Briarcliff Manor, New York, and that's in Westchester County, north of New York City. And I love this word cursorial. I'm going to remember that. And I've been very sad to hear that and this is the second time I've heard it, that it's not being taught in schools, or some schools now. So I've done various forms of writing in my life, and it's always been a way for me to express myself. It's cleansing, healing, and now part of how I look at it is it's a way for me to say what I want to say, how I want to say it, get my feedback or not. But it allows me to hear, if nobody else hears me, to hear myself. And I enjoy the adventure in trying to put the words together. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice. Melinda, you ready?
Well, I don't know if I'm ready, but I'm in Saxons River, Vermont, and I keep thinking about just the beauty of a great pen, and how different vehicles are. I just had my typewriter fixed, and I remember I did so much writing on my typewriter before, and what a different, I mean, it's different than a computer for sure, and it's different from handwriting, but I did very well with the typewriter. But I love a really nice pen, and it's related to the quality of thoughts. I mean, I can't, I mean, that sounds silly that I couldn't say the same thing with a Bic pen, but there's something about that fluidity that helps the brain or the heart open up.
Yeah. Others are nodding. I don't think you're alone in that, or silly.
Thank you.
All right, so we've planned 3 workshops. The first one really tried to focus more on kind of the physical experience of writing. This one is going to focus more on kind of the mind experience, and you can think of that as mind in terms of psychology, or mind in terms of mindfulness, mind in kind of the Buddhist sense that is kind of head and heart together. You can create your version of mind for this that you want to use. And the idea of the third workshop is a focus on the process experience. But each of these is independent. They're related thematically, but each of them is independent. You can be here for 1, you can be here for 2, you can be here for 3. But before we launch into the work that we're going to try to do together today, I think it's always a good idea to make take a moment to make some decisions about what we're after. These workshops, I've been to a lot of these, and they can kind of wander away and become something that we didn't intend at all. So I think it's useful for us to both be open to what happens, but also to identify some intentions that we have. And so for me, the intention of this workshop is for us to pay some attention to what happens in our heads when we're writing. And do that so that we can be mindful of what's happening to us while we're writing, but so that we can also be aware of what's happening in our minds while we're writing. One of the things I have my college students do is, try to pay attention to what's happening in their minds as they write, because a lot of times they'll kind of hit a wall and they won't know why or how. And mostly it's because they've never really looked at the process or looked at what's happening to them while they are writing. And so it just either goes or it doesn't go. And because they haven't looked at what choices they're making or looked at the processes that they're using, they really don't have any way to intervene when it either breaks down or does something they're not intending it to do. So that's my intention for us for tonight, is to just spend some time looking at what our minds do and look at what our thoughts are doing. Look at what comes up when we're writing, so that we can be more mindful of those influences and those forces that are participating in the writing with us. And I want to give you just a minute so that you can think for yourselves, you know, what your particular intention might be for tonight, what you're after, if there's something in particular that you're thinking about, and to kind of bring that forward in your mind so that you can be purposeful. And now, to help facilitate that intention or motivation, I want us to just do a quick little meditation, quieting ourselves, getting ourselves kind of situated physically in a way that's comfortable. You know, if you need something to write on or write with, try to get it someplace nearby so you have it within reach when you need it. Because we're going to do a little bit of writing right after our meditation. And so if you want to get yourself comfortable, you can close your eyes if you'd like, leave them open. And I'd like you to just breathe. And as you breathe in, you can say to yourself, I'm aware, then breathing in. As you breathe out, you can say to yourself, I'm aware, I'm breathing out. In, out. In, out. And on your next inhalation, you can say to yourself, here. And on your next exhalation, you can say to yourself, now. You can look at the quality of your breaths in and out. Are they long or short? Deep or shallow? Smooth or rough? Slow or fast? We're all here together right now in this moment, in Sangha together, in community together. In this moment, we are all safe. We're all cared for. We're all compassion. What happens here stays here. We're among friends with shared interests, which means we can grow as writers from each other. And we also can help others grow in their writing with what we have to offer. Couple more breaths, and when you're ready, open your eyes. And come back on screen if you would. So we can all see one another. Okay. You all are making me feel so relaxed. Look at you. You all look so calm. So I want to start this week with a little bit of writing. And I want you to do a couple of things in this writing. It's going to be a relatively brief writing. It's going to be about 3 minutes. And it's going to seem long maybe to you, in the midst of the experience. But there's 2 things that I want you to do in this 3-minute writing. And one thing is, what I want you to do is try to narrate as much as you can what's happening in your mind. A lot of times this writing ends up looking like a list, and that's perfectly fine. Sometimes it doesn't. The form doesn't really matter. There's no required form, I should say. The form should take whatever form you want it to. The second thing that I want you to do is, in this 3 minutes, I want you to start moving your pen or pencil on. I assume everybody's writing with a pen or pencil on paper. No? Okay. Then your fingers on the keyboards. That's fine too. Whatever medium you're using. Melinda, maybe you'll even use your typewriter. What I want you to do is keep generating text and don't stop. You may come to a point where you think you have nothing else to say. And when that happens, if that happens, you write, I don't have anything else to say. I don't know what else I'm going to say. And you keep doing that and something else will come. Okay? But the 2 strategic things are, you're narrating what's happening in your mind in this 3-minute writing period, and you keep generating text. If you're using a pen or a pencil, you keep writing no matter what. If you're using a keyboard, you keep typing no matter what. Okay? Any questions? Okay. Then let me start the timer. Go. 15 seconds left. Okay, you want to finish the sentence or idea that you're in at the moment? Okay, so for some people, these kinds of exercises are really troubling. They are anxiety producing. They can be stressful. For others, it feels great because they feel kind of unleashed. They feel kind of welcomed into this open-ended kind of experience. And I'm just curious if you could use one word or a very brief phrase to characterize what that felt like just now. What would you say?
Necessary to get going.
Okay. Okay.
Perplexing.
I'm sorry. What was that, Cynthia?
Perplexing.
Ah. Okay.
An easy flow.
Okay.
Informative.
Okay.
I found it comfortable. I do different writing techniques of listening to different parts of my mind, and I did that again here.
Okay. Okay. So what would be, how would you describe, or what would be the kind of things that were most prominent that were happening for you during this free writing activity?
I didn't want to write everything down.
And could you keep up?
Yeah.
Yeah, my mind usually moves so much faster than my handwriting does that I have a hard time keeping up. And then there's this kind of dialogue or monologue that says, well, you're not writing down the right things. You missed them.
I would say I was paying attention to different parts, almost 3 different voices. And then there was even a 4th voice saying, I'm probably doing this wrong. But that was another part.
Okay. Okay. Would folks say that what was happening for them was generally positive, generally negative, or generally neutral?
Positive.
Neutral.
Positive or neutral.
Okay.
Somewhere. It's what I've experienced before when I pay attention to what's going on in my head.
Okay. Okay. Did any of you see anything or attend to anything that you hadn't experienced or noticed before? No?
Second.
For me, it was just realizing that I have no idea what my brain is doing when it has a thought, and then it translates it into mental words and then into the written word, and how it gets put down on paper. It's just a mystery. I have no idea how to describe that.
Yeah.
Except to say that it happens, but I'm interested to find out more.
Okay.
I would say that one new thing for me, even taking the last class, and a new technique of trying to be mindful, is listening for sounds. So even while I'm thinking and writing, there's another part of me listening to the sounds, and that's new for me.
Okay. And how do you manage all of that?
Not well, I think.
Do you find that the sounds distract you, or
Oh,
are you?
no, I wrote them down. So, you know,
Okay.
I was thinking something and then I also was hearing a sound, I wrote that down. So I was narrating that.
Okay. Okay.
But I guess it makes me also aware of my mind I'm not conscious of, that is paying attention to sounds, even when I'm not paying attention to sounds, that it is paying attention. Some part of me is paying attention.
Okay.
And it's having an effect on me, maybe even.
Yeah, I find it really interesting, Stephen, that you can bring that all together, not necessarily into some kind of coherent narrative, but you can take all that input and not, well, I should say it this way. When I'm paying attention to sounds when I'm writing, I have a tendency to think about them as distractions.
Yeah.
Rather than as something to complement or some other set of inputs that I can gather.
Yeah, I was just thinking in terms of meditation, it's like noticing a distraction, not getting lost in it, but just saying, oh, there's a distraction. I'm
Yeah.
trying
Yeah.
not, and okay, there we go again. You know, there's the mind at work.
That's fascinating. And Cynthia, I'm curious for you, you know, where you're thinking about, you know, a thought translated, or a thought that, because I think what you said was a thought becomes kind of an internal word, and then that becomes a written word. How are you feeling about that thinking, that wonder?
I guess, to be honest, a little frustrated that I really have no clue what's happening. But also, this, it's kind of fun to think about,
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. You know, I think this is one of those places where the English teacher, the writing teacher in me, has a tendency to say, this is why writing regularly becomes so important. Because the more steps you have in that process that you have to think about to make happen, the harder it is to get from that concept to something written down. And, you know, writing isn't like, you know, fixing a car or, you know, washing the dishes. It's different. There's a process of development and experience that happens there that facilitates that writing outcome, that written outcome. And for a lot of people, for a lot of students I've had over the years, the worry about getting it right, making sure that it's correct, is a real obstacle, because they're so focused on, am I doing it right, that they're not able to then attend to what's happening, what is my mind doing, how am I translating from these thoughts to something on the screen or on a page. And it's funny, because if you think about it, teenagers, late teenagers, early adults, which are the students I deal with most, live so much of their lives online through images and writing. And yet when I ask them, what kind of writing do they do? They never talk about, you know, Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, you know, the memes that they create, any of those things, because there's this sense that when an English teacher talks about writing, there's something very specific that he intends. And what I'm asking about is their experiences as writers, rather than the products the textual objects that they've created, which in school, more often than not, really are foreign to them. But as they keep doing that kind of work, they generate more facility with it, and they don't have to think about all of the particulars. Like, we don't have to think about how to spell "and" anymore.
Mm.
You know, we don't have to think about how to spell our names anymore. Or, you know, maybe we need to think about some comma use, but a lot of it we don't really need to worry about anymore because we've done it so much that it's become kind of practice released from conscious consideration. And so on the one hand, it's great to move in that process towards that kind of free-flowing activity, right? But we also have this idea, at least in my mindfulness practice, in my meditation practice, that paying attention reveals the richness of whatever it is that you're doing. Paying attention isn't about cluttering it up with stuff to worry about, but rather with being aware of what your mind is doing, how your mind is working, how your mind is translating whatever it is you're thinking about into a text of some sort, right? So I guess one of the points that I'd like us to think about is that, you know, from a very Buddhist perspective, our minds are our lives are projections of our minds in a lot of ways, most ways, depending upon, you know, which school you participate in. It could be everything is a projection of your mind. It could be, you know, how you interpret things, how you experience things are projections of your mind. And so one of the questions I thought would be interesting for us to think about is when you look at what you've written, narrating your process, what do you see there? And is it interpretation? Is it, for you, kind of factual information? Is it some combination of the two? And I'll give you an example of this. You know, we went to, my wife and I went to Greece last month, and we visited the Acropolis of Mycenae, which is out in the Peloponnesian. And there are these huge, thick walls around the outside of this fort. And they're called Cyclopean walls, because the mythology is that Perseus had, and I think Zeus was Perseus's father too. He was a busy guy, that Zeus. Perseus got the Cyclops, who were also sons of Zeus, to build these walls. And the idea was that the walls were so thick and the stones were so big, and it was such a feat of engineering that human beings couldn't possibly have done it. So it had to be Cyclops who built these walls for Perseus and Mycenae. And so there's the mythology part, there's the story part. Archaeologists, you know, paleoarchitects, historians, archaeologists, anthropologists, all refer to these walls still as Cyclopean walls. Not because they believe that the Cyclops built the walls, but because when they say Cyclopean walls to each other, they know exactly what the other person, what that person using that term is referring to. It's a particular kind of style and thickness of fortified wall. So for me, that's that fascinating point where the stories that we tell and the realities, the physical realities that we encounter kind of intermingle. And I think we do this with writing. I think we have an idea that writing should be, and we tell ourselves a story about what that is. And sometimes we really luck out and the story aligns with our experience. But a lot of times they don't align. And that's when our tendency is to think we're doing it wrong, or we're not smart enough, or we're not good enough, or we're not writers, right? I mean, if you think about it, writing is a totally synthetic activity. It's not genetic. It's totally synthetic. It's not natural, right? It's become habitual for human beings, right? But there are some human beings who live their entire lives without any kind of literate activity at all. And there was a pretty good chunk of human history where literate activity wasn't available to them either. So it's not a component part of humanity. It's a component part of human culture, modern human society, yes. But it's not us. Our writing is not us. However, if we take that Buddhist perspective and say, the way we see the world is what we bring to it rather than what we find, can we say the same thing about writing? Would you say that the things that you bring to writing shape how you experience it? Or is there some kind of activity, some kind of experience that moves beyond or beside or before or after whatever it is that you bring to it? So an example would be, if I decide, because I get bad grades on my writing at school, if I decide I'm not a writer, is that a reality because I'm not a writer, or is it a reality because I've decided it? It's like Henry Ford said, if you decide that you can or you can't, you're right. So what I'm trying to get to is, and I'm talking a lot more than I intended, I apologize for that. What are you bringing to your writing that facilitates it for you? And you could also ask, what are you bringing to your writing that interferes? But the more important question is, what is it that facilitates it? Because if you can attend to that, be mindful of that, pay attention to that, you can amplify it. It's like Oprah says, what you emphasize expands, right? So are there things that you experienced in that little 3 minutes of writing that you could amplify or focus your attention on, concentrate on in a mindful, thoughtful way that can facilitate your writing? Or are there other things that you know of that help you with your writing? Things in your practice, things in your thoughts, things in your behaviors around writing. What helps you? And this is the part where you talk.
What comes to mind is that my life experiences are my incentive, and they propel me, and they are, I think, guided by by spirit, by what comes through me. So it's more than just my life experiences. There's some chemistry, alchemy that comes out onto the page.
Is there a way that you can invite that? Make yourself available to that?
It comes pretty easily most of the time. And I know that my daily morning meditation is a big part of why and how I can be in that state of reception.
Okay. Anybody else? Are these really hard questions? What do you think?
It is a hard question, yeah.
Let me try to ask a less circuitous version. What helps you write?
structure, structure with other people, structure.
Okay. To be, because,
Because I have a million things going on in my life and jobs and this and that and should. It's hard to allow myself to carve out the time. If I'm ever bored and I write, my mind, I mean, I do it for 2 straight hours and I love it, but it seems like I only write when I'm bored.
that would be an interesting question to pursue, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Well, I would say what I'm thinking about tonight is I'm liking this topic of the connection of mind and writing. I'm wondering, for example, for myself, if I do a lot of thinking. Writing to me is like a tool of getting something down, but is it already happening in my mind? Now, I can do things like morning pages where I try to push the mind out of the way and just write and see what comes up. But most often there's a connection between the mind and writing for me. So that's what I'm thinking about tonight.
Okay. Okay.
I was really grateful to your last session because that was like totally wild to think about the physical connection to writing. And certainly not that muscle isn't really worked for me. That was all new. That was great.
Okay. Okay.
Mm.
Anybody else? So what I would like to suggest is that between now and next week, or on your own schedule, whatever time you have, try to write. It doesn't, and by writing, I'm not thinking about it in terms of the production of a textual object. What I'm talking about is trying to be in the experience of writing and just paying attention to what's happening to you while you're doing that. And there are lots of different things that could be there. Is there the voice of a teacher you had once? Is there some voice in your head that's you saying supportive and encouraging things, or saying discouraging and dismaying kinds of things? Are there principles that are at work in the writing that you're trying to do? Are there ideals that you're aspiring to? Where's your attention focused when you're writing? Are you focused on being in? Are you focused on the generating kind of part of the writing process? Are you focused on getting it down? Are you focused on what the end result will be? Because each of those emphases puts you in a different relationship to the work you're doing in the moment. And I'm not saying one is any better than the other. It's just people are focused in different places. Are there experiences that you've had with writing that are contributing to or present in the writing that you're doing at the moment? You know, and it could be for good or ill, right? I mean, it could be, yeah, I remember this one time I wrote like 6 really great poems, just one right after the other. And I was just so in the flow. And I wish I could have that experience again. I'd like to have that again. Or I remember writing the prospectus for my dissertation, and it was bad. It was really bad. And it took me a long time to go back to it and try again because it was so bad. And I knew it was that bad. Are there things that you need to do to prepare yourself for writing, or prepare the space for your writing, or prepare to receive your writing, however you might conceive it? And the whole purpose of learning about these things paying attention to these things is twofold. One is the more we know about what our minds are doing around our writing, the more options we have in following those things that work for us and setting aside those things that don't. The other reason is if we're mindful in our writing, we are opening ourselves up in a way that just the production of text doesn't allow. We are in the moment, in the experience of the writing, in the experience of the thinking that we're doing, that we're trying to get down on paper. And I don't know about you, I don't always have ideas before I start writing. Sometimes I start the writing and the ideas come because of the physical activity, right? Do any of you have that experience? You start writing, you don't know where it's going to go or what it's going to be, and something comes that it's like, oh, well, that's a nice surprise. I know a lot of folks really want to know exactly where it's going to go before they start, and a lot of hesitation. In my field, we call it apprehension. A lot of apprehension comes from wanting to be certain of exactly where it's going to land before you start, which if you can execute that easily and comfortably, or if that structure, like Paige was saying, if that structure is really important for you, that can be very useful. But for a writer like me, who is much more interested in discovery than description, I find it very stifling, but I know other people don't. And this is the great gift of our living and writing in the post-process era. So the process writing movement started in the 70s. And if you're interested in authors who write about this from that early stage, I can refer you to them. But the whole idea was that rather than only evaluating the written product after it's been completed, that as teachers of writing, we need to teach people to understand that there's a process, that they are using a process of some kind, whether they're aware of that or not, whether they're attending to that or not. And so we set about trying to figure out what the writing process is. And you've probably heard versions of this, pre-writing, writing, rewriting. That's one version. Another version is drafting, revising, editing, and proofreading. Another version is research, outlining, drafting, editing, and proofreading. Do you see what I mean? And so, we tried to figure out what the process was, and it was very messy. And, I loved it. As you probably figured out, I loved it because it was all about my experience. It was all about what was happening to me. It was all about how I was managing that work. And the great gift of starting college at the end of the 70s was that you got credit for writing just junk. You got credit for the time and energy you put in, right? You got credit for the work, right? Even if the end product wasn't great, you still got some credit for the amount of time and energy. This is when we started using journals and, writing reflections and, all of those kinds of things, which are great. They're really, really useful when they are done in a mindful and engaged way. When they are done in a perfunctory and performative way, it's just more stuff, right? It's just more stuff for the students to, but we're in the post-process era now, which means we have learned that there isn't one process that works for everybody. And instead, The trick is to find the processes that work for you, that get you the results that you're pursuing, that help you to see and do the things that you are really wanting to do. So instead of saying, okay, here's the process, pre-writing, writing, rewriting, what we say as teachers now is, okay, so we know some things that help. You need to find your own version of this or decide whether this is part of a process that helps you. Let's try some pre-writing strategies. Let's try some writing strategies. Let's try some rewriting, revising, editing, proofreading strategies. So then the students can kind of choose among them for the process that they find, the process that they find that works. And, you know, some students are motivated by, I don't want to spend much time with writing. If I can get a B, I'm happy. I would rather that they work for an A, but if that's where they are, that's where they are. That's what they want. So they find a process that facilitates that for them. Is this making sense? And so in the next week or so, what I'd like you to try to pay attention to is just take 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be hours on end. Take 10 minutes and do a little bit of writing and pay attention to what's happening to you that's making that writing move, that's helping you to meet whatever your expectations are, whatever your hopes are for that piece of writing. So it's writing, right? But it's also attending to your mind as the kind of the crucible where that writing is being born and generated. Does this make sense?
It sounds like we are to notice the process of figuring out what our process is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, this is an assignment I give my students called, This is How I Write. And I tell them, just narrate writing, this is how I write. That's all you need to do. And it just blows their minds. It's like, so you want me to write about writing while I'm writing? It's like, yes, that's exactly what I want you to do. So that's the kind of thing I'd like you to try to do for this next, a few times during the next week or so. And then when we come back together next time, we will we'll be focusing on process and on helping you to kind of free yourself to pursue a process that helps you, that works for you. Okay? I promise I won't talk nearly this much next time. I'd like to close with a little dedication. We've done a lot of thinking and a lot of talking. Well, I've done a lot of talking and a lot of work together. And I want to make sure that we direct that in a really productive and positive way. And I'd like to say, I'd like to dedicate the work that we've done to all of those folks who are trying to figure out how to write and what to write. All those folks who want to have a voice and just need an opportunity to find writing that works for them. For all those folks who can use writing towards their mindfulness practice and can use mindfulness towards their writing practice. And I'll stop talking now and say thank you very much for being here. If anybody has any questions or concerns they want to talk about, I'll hang out for a little bit. And otherwise, I look forward to hopefully seeing you next week, Tuesday at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.
Bill, this is a stupid question, but could you just give me a 1 minute or 2 minute sketch about what we did last time? Like, what was the point of last class?
Yeah, the point of the last class was to get you to think about the physicality of writing.
So the actual writing with the body?
Yes, because what I was trying to do was get body and mind kind of working together.
Okay.
Okay.
But we were also paying attention to the environment, right?
Right, because that's part of the physical experience.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And so, and it could be sensory details, it could be physical sensations, it could be, you know, I mean, one of the things I loved about what Melinda said about having a good pen,
Uh-huh.
I'm always in search of a better pen.
Me too. Me too. Me too.
I recommend if you have a Office Max or
Yeah.
I think it's Office
Recommend
Max.
anything. Recommend anything.
They have pens there that are called Tool, TUL.
Okay.
I don't
Thank
know if you can see this or not.
Okay. Yes, I do.
I love these.
Okay. Thank you. I'm always in for a new pen.
So smooth
Yeah,
and
This
nice.
is my latest,
rich
and
ink.
this is my latest, and I'm not happy with it. Actually, I keep
Pilot,
not being
yeah.
happy.
I've used those too. I like those too.
Yeah.
But these Tool pens,
Yeah.
I really like. The
I'll be
other one
buying-
I like is the let's see, the Pilot G2 0.07.
Okay. Yeah, that sometimes is too messy for me.
Yeah, well, if I use that, it has to be on paper that's really absorbent,
Yeah. Yeah.
because otherwise the ink just smears.
Yeah. And I'll just tell you one little secret. I'm a great pen thief.
I
I
am
have
too.
I have been in a doctor's office, and I sort of like it and just pocket the pen.
Well, if we're being honest, I went to a wedding on Sunday, and there was a little advice card for the couple, and a trivia contest, and there were what's the word I'm looking for? Where you go around and look for information and
Oh, yes, like a treasure hunt.
a treasure hunt, yeah. And they had these Pilot G2 pens.
Uh-huh.
There were some of these,
Uh-huh.
and there were some other ones, and I pocketed the G2.
One more further question. So how
Sure.
does paying attention to the physicality help our writing?
Well, it does that in two ways. One is it gives us an opportunity to see how the body, how the physicality is impacting what we're doing in either a positive, negative, or neutral way.
Uh-huh.
And so if we're noticing that, it also kind of provokes mindfulness.
Okay.
The other thing it does is for creative writers, poets, creative nonfiction, drama, fiction, it trains us to pay attention to those physical details
Yes.
towards the content of our writing too.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Thanks for the extra time.
Yeah, no worries. I'll see you next week,
All right.
Stephen.
Good night. Thank you.
Take care.